I spent the past week watching some of the most unconventional movies in cinema history. Movies that break all the rules, push the boundaries, and make you question what a movie even is. All to figure out if they're just gimmicks, or maybe kind of brilliant. Nice official selection of the Cannes Film Festival. It has to be good, right? Starting with Timecode. Now this movie is supposed to show you 4 different storylines all at the same time, as in simultaneously. The screen is divided in 4, and each of the squares features a different group of people that eventually turn out to be somehow connected. It is pretty intriguing. It could definitely be incredibly messy and hard to follow, but on the bright side you get more for your money. It is 4 times the film. I just wonder, how difficult is it going to be to follow along with all 4 stories at the same time? Unless you watch it like this. As soon as the movie started, I was happy that you're sort of getting eased into it with only 1 square, and every time a new one is added, it is just an establishing shot, so your brain has time to adjust. Once they're all there, the audio is constantly fading in and out depending on which square has the most important information at any given moment. Despite that, however, you really cannot look away from this movie. I was working really hard to make sure I followed along. I mean, look at my eyes. It's like a married man on a beach vacation. I am getting stressed out just by the sheer amount of how much is happening at the same time. I feel like I'm getting a sensory overload. At this point, I was thinking that my brain is simply not advanced enough. Maybe I'm just not capable of keeping up with that many storylines. Maybe I don't even know anything about movies. Or maybe I'm just really stupid. Oh, I forgot my coffee. If I'm going to focus on 4 stories at the same time, I need to be at my sharpest. Around the halfway mark, things started to slowly make sense. I like that they added some big and small clues to help you place everything together in the physical space. Like the earthquakes, so you know it's all happening in the same town, or the characters going from one square to another. Sometimes multiple squares would capture the same moment from different angles, and otherwise it is super satisfying when you eventually start putting the pieces together. Makes you feel smart. It is also impressive to think about how they pulled it off, because the director had 2 strict rules for himself. 1, it had to be 4 one-take shots that were filmed at the same time and perfectly timed. And 2, to avoid cheating and combining different takes in the editing, the actors could never wear the same outfit twice. On top of that, pretty much all of the dialogue is improvised. The screenplay was just an outline of the story beats and was written on music paper, with each bar line representing a minute. I mean, just look at this. How do you even read it? The cast is pretty stacked too. They rehearsed for 2 weeks, and what we see is the 16th attempt. But the main question remains, is it just a gimmick or an actual storytelling tool? Some people are calling it ridiculously good and a revolutionary breakthrough in filmmaking, while others impossible to watch and a sure headache. To me, all of the above. But it's a bit more nuanced than that, so let me introduce the completely objective gimmick story matrix measurement scale. Sort of. Now, I did enjoy being able to look around whenever I wanted. It almost made me feel like a security guard, but at the same time, I couldn't fully relax. I felt like I was always on edge, and if I zoomed out even for a second or focused on one of the squares for a bit too long, I'd be stressing out that I might have missed some important detail from the others. It also reminded me of those TikTok videos with the gameplay to keep your attention, so who knows, maybe it was ahead of its time. Next up is Blue, which literally shows you nothing but a blue screen for the entirety of it. I'm not even sure if it technically classifies as a movie, but it did air on British television, and while there are no visuals, it is meant to be experienced by listening to it. A bit like those radio dramas from the 40s.
Alright boys, let's hit out!
But what makes Blue different than an audiobook or someone just reading a script? Let's look at some of the reviews. Experimental yet brilliant. Pretentious to an unbelievable extreme. Blue. Good film, especially if you like the color. Can you believe if someone is like, oh man, only if it was yellow! So, cautiously optimistic, I cozied up, kept an open mind, put on my headphones, and was ready to experience Blue. Now to start off, the sound mix of this movie is absolutely amazing. I could clearly visualize the environment we're in every time the scenery was changed, whether it was a coffee shop, a hospital waiting room, or just somewhere outside. It was those little sound effects in the background that really help your imagination. And after a while, I felt like I could see it in my head, like down to the way it would be edited if it had visuals. The film itself is highly personal. The writer and director was actually going blind at the time and could only see in shades of blue, so in a way, he puts us in his head. There, we see what he sees, and we hear what he thinks, which is reflecting on life, mortality, and the slow decline of his health.
My mind bright as a button, but my body falling apart. There's death in the air here, but we're not talking about it. I step off the curb and a cyclist nearly knocks me down.
It is also somewhat surreal, with the color blue itself becoming a character, and the whole thing kind of puts you in a trance. I was worried that my 21st century attention span would make it feel boring, but it really wasn't. As opposed to Timecode, which gives you a lot of information that your brain is working overtime to process, this time around your brain is also working hard, but because there is not enough information. So it is pretty fun to fill in the gaps at your own pace. If it had visuals, I think that it would be something along the lines of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And while the plot itself, the surrealism, the experimental nature of it might not be everyone's cup of tea, the gimmick gets a perfect 10 out of 10 because it's there to enhance the story. And just for the record, you would think that I would relax and close my eyes, but no, I actually watched it. Which is why I noticed that sometimes those little artifacts appear on screen. Maybe to illustrate those little patterns you get when you rub your eyes? I don't know, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that I might have stared at the blue screen for a bit too long. Was that a good joke? Be honest. I just already spent so long on the effect. Next up, Final Cut Ladies and Gentlemen, which is a movie entirely made of other movies, by editing together hundreds of different clips and using them to create a coherent story. I mean, just look at the amount of names in the opening credits. I am particularly excited about this one because it has the potential to be really cool, but at the same time, as it is often with those experimental sort of films, it could be a complete mess, complete chaos, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out, so let's check it out. It is supposed to be a very simple love story, so the main selling point here is definitely the gimmick. The movie starts with simple activities, like the character waking up, showering, shaving, walking down the street, and it slowly builds into a more complex narrative. As their look is changing essentially every few seconds, it also makes sense to have only two main characters, because if you were to add any more, they would have to be completely different from each other, like adding a robot or a dog, for example. Oh my god, this is so cool. I'm not gonna lie, not even a minute into it, and I was already loving it. The only question I had was if it would get exhausting after a while, because it could be one of those things that it is pretty cool for a while, but an hour and a half, it's a whole different story. I was also wondering if they would do a dialogue and how that would work, but it turns out they do, and it is perfectly easy to follow. Oh my god, this is so good! This is so good! This is so good! This is so good! Part of the reason why I was so excited is because a few years ago I made a video about the match cut and how amazing of a technique it is, and this is basically Match Cut the movie, but it goes so much deeper than that. Because not only did they have to match the action, but the emotion. Like for example, this scene when she picks up the phone and is sad, meaning that even if they found the most perfect clip, but say for example the actress was happy, they still couldn't use it. I'm so impressed. I need to shut up and keep watching. There were a few times that I got slightly lost for a moment because everything changes and you don't have a visual anchor. Like when the two guys were fighting and I wasn't entirely sure who actually won, or when she walks into a building and I didn't really know what that building was until they made it clear it's a hospital. But even then, it's not that bad. Yeah. Maybe don't watch it with your parents. Just trying to think about the amount of work that must have went into this makes my head hurt. Shout out to the editors. Oh, wait. No, hold on a second. They matched the lips of a completely different movie and a completely different take to match the song that the character is singing from another movie. I haven't been that giggly about watching a movie in so long. Because of the complete legal nightmare it would be to try and license everything out, the movie is technically for educational purposes only, and the director seems to be more than okay with it being shared online. Either way, I cannot overstate how much I liked it. Unironically, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but it's maybe one of my favorite movies of all time. The story itself may be simple, but the film is very unique, very creative, and very well executed. It's like a love letter to cinema itself, even though the music is iconic movie soundtracks. It is also fun to try and guess how many you have seen and can recognize, like a mini game you can play along. So this whole experiment started a bit as a joke to see how weird and wacky some of those experimental movies can get, but I accidentally found one of my new favorite movies, which just goes to show that it's important to keep an open mind because you never know. They can bring a lot more to the table than we give them credit for.